Let's see if I can do this. There we go. Hi, everybody. All right, you guys. It's so nice to be here with you. I have to say, it's been a little bit. I have had a little bit nutty, a nutty last since but the month of December was just kind of like a big fat blur. Anybody else? Um, So I'm back. I'm here. I'm super excited. My name is Crispina French, and I am a textile upcycling entrepreneur, activist, podcast host. You guys, hello. Did anybody hear this week's podcast episode? Anybody shout out if you did. It's called Rags to Riches Textile Upcycling Podcast, and my friend Catherine Swanson was my guest this week, and so much fun. Like, oh my gosh, she's amazing. She has a great business model and she shares all about it. And the best thing about podcasts and just basically all the social media is that you get to meet really cool people and, you know, have fun and kind of, I don't know, just share information, right? So every Tuesday, I do that. I share information and I come right on here. I actually am live streaming on a bunch of different platforms right now. So wherever you are is the place that I am. And I come, Tuesday, 20 minutes, usually right around 2:30. And today we're going to talk about sewing kits, you guys, because I'm all about textile upcycling. And, a lot of people are kind of like, I don't know, they might not know like what exactly is textile upcycling. And textile upcycling is basically taking any kind of waste fabrics, whether it's used clothing, manufacturers' waste, scrap from other people's projects, um, you know, at dead stock, or ends of yardage, remnants, whatever, things that are kind of like heading to landfill, and turning them into something cool and beautiful. And honestly, I don't find it that difficult. I think it's kind of fun, right? It's like this creative, it's an added level of creativity that you have to bring with you into the making process, which I super enjoy. And one of the things that pretty much any textile upcycler, well, with a few exceptions, needs is a really cool sewing kit, right? Like, and it's funny, I do all of my sewing in my studio, which is where I am right now. And I live right down the street. Like, it's actually a road. If there was ever a road, I have a road. It's definitely not a street. There's no pavement involved. And right now we have like mud and ice, and it's not a street. Um, so I live right down the road, and I don't do sewing at home, but I do have a sewing kit that I keep at home that is in this little pouch. And this little pouch was like a freebie that I got from an event that I went to. And I don't know, like if I have to sew a button on, or God forbid I have a hole in my sock and I need to do a little darning this time of year, I'm all about the wool socks. So I always want to make, and does anybody else like holes in your socks? Like, it's super sucks, especially if like your toe goes through and you're just so uncomfortable. So are you guys in a cold climate? Who out there is in a cold climate where like wool socks are super handy? Just post in there what where you're from, where you're tuning in from, and let me know. Are you watching this live, or is this like a recording? Oh, Kim Kleeman, hello from Montana. I bet you got some wool socks in your dresser, my dear. Um, and Jeremy Osborne. Oh, hi. And let's see who else is on here. Carrie. Happy New Year. Thank you so much. Anyway, so the Jeremy Osborne's all about the wool socks in Boston. Yeah, Boston, right? You got to have some warm feet. And I honestly think like it's kind of crazy, but if you have warm feet, your body's just way more comfortable. So I actually have like wool socks that I have a pair of wool socks at my studio in case my kids come to visit, or in case my socks get wet during the day or whatever. So I'm a little fanatical, bordering on kind of like, maybe OCD about wool socks, but that's a whole nother discussion. So the other day I found myself with a hole in my sock, and I thought, oh, I'm so glad I have my sewing kit here. And I wanted to just share like, what's a useful tool to have in your sewing kit, and how do you store it? So Do you guys have a sewing kit? Anybody? I kind of feel like a lot of people who I meet here and who tune into my live streams are sewers. So, so many times you can use the word sew in a sentence. Um, this is my sewing kit. The reason why I like it small and little like this is because I can throw it in my bag. I don't carry around a pin cushion with me, but I do have this super cool little box that had, you can get these with like Altoids or whatever. Altoids, or there's a couple of brands that use these metal boxes, and this one was from Barclays. I think this is something I got in Ireland. I can't remember where it came from, but inside here, I put all my sharp stuff. So pins, needles, stuff that's going to like poke through my little pouch, right? So that it's just kind of an added layer of protection. And then, you can also just like actually, let me show you this closer. What I do is when I have like a small piece of string, I'll sometimes stick it in there too. Although, truth be told, it tends to tangle unless you're going to use it kind of right away. And then inside of here, I also carry this little piece of fabric so that it's just a scrap, and it has the needles that I might be currently using. And sometimes I usually actually put this right into my little metal box when I'm not using it. But this will have, a couple of different sizes. If you know me, you probably know that I like to play with like different colored threads at the same time. And so that also goes in my little box. Then inside of my kit here, you'll see how there's one thing that's kind of similar about most sewing kits, and that is that there's something that kind of looks like this, like a knot, a ball kind of string, thread, whatever. And this is kind of the spot that I put my little bits. So if I have, if I'm sewing something and I have, a foot or, 18 inches of thread left over, rather than tossing it, I'll throw it right in here. And then I'll have a bunch of different colors without having to carry around a lot of, volume of any particular color. And then in addition, I have, let me see where I put those. Okay, right here. These are my scissors. And I'll tell you something, you guys, like, wait, hold on one second. I just saw there was a question, but I'm going to get to questions in 1 minute. Can you hang with me? I hope that you don't have to go anywhere too quick. But this is called a scissor sheath. And I bought these from this really cool business online that's called Beyond Measure. And this cute girl, I think her name is Grace. Yeah, it's Grace. She sells these. They're leather. They're lined with like a really nice wool felt. So they keep any kind of scissor from getting any kind of corrosion, rust, anything like that. And they also make it possible for you to like throw a pair of scissors in your bag or your sewing kit, depending on with what you're up to, right? And the way that it works is you put your scissors in, right? And then there's this really super cool little brass button kind of thing that comes through a buttonhole. So that brass piece is coming through the handle of my scissor. So they're in there. They're not going to come out. And the scissors I use are, if you've been around a while, you might know, they're from a company that's called Ernest Wright. And they're actually handmade. They're beautiful. They're made in Sheffield, UK. And they make this, I sell these in my shop. There's a dressmaker. It's like an 8.5 inch. They're called bent trimmers, which kind of can be a little confusing if you're not familiar. They're not actually, they actually are bent. Truth be told, there's like a little curve so that when you're cutting, it's like the natural kind of curve that you cut, and it kind of counteracts curving the fabric so you can really follow a nice line. And they make right-handed and left-handed really beautiful dressmaker scissors. So those are available in my shop. They cost $1 million, not quite, but they're very expensive. And they are beautiful scissors that are guaranteed for life. And I just have to show you, oh my God, something that totally broke my heart. But when I first, I sell these in my shop, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to get a new pair because I need a pair of scissors. So I took a pair, and can you guys see this Band-Aid on the round handle here? That is because the first week that I had these, I put them on my clicker press, which is this giant, like heavy machinery piece of cutting equipment. And I cut like the dye went right into my scissors, my brand new scissors. And I was like, oh my God. And I thought it was going to ruin them because a lot of times, like if you drop scissors on like a hard, like stone floor, concrete floor, it can kind of like tweak them so that they no longer like have a nice, the blades don't meet nicely. But I have to tell you, even with the clicker press injury, they're just beautiful scissors and they cut beautifully. I have not had to need to sharpen them, but I know that they do sharpen scissors for people um, if they're in need. And then they also make these really cute, tiny little stork scissors, which if I, oh, maybe they're in here. Hold on a second. No, they're not. I don't have my stork scissors with me. I think I put them at my house. But in addition to the scissors, I also have this tiny little scissor sheath for my little stork scissors. And those are really super good for embroidery. And I usually have these in my sewing kit. So like a small pair of scissors, pins and needles, some different colored threads, tape measure super handy, and I love the retractable ones mainly just because they're so cool. You can push the button, they go back in, kind of like a kid over here. And they're also, they don't tangle in your pouch. And then that metal box for the pins is like super helpful if you guys have any of those Altoid boxes, things like that. It's nice to have the metal because they just don't poke through, and it makes your whole sewing experience just that much more pleasurable. So I'm going to look at questions. I think I saw, thanks for all the waves, by the way. All right, Jeremy Osborne is asking, I have a question. When finished sewing, do you tie it off in a knot? How do you end it? Well, I do. I mean, everybody does that differently, Jeremy. That's a really good question, and I get that asked a lot, especially for live, when I'm teaching live sessions. But sometimes when I'm sewing, depending on the technique that I'm using and how smooth I want the finish to be, I will actually stick the end like inside of a seam so I don't have a knot. And, I'll do a couple of stitches like back, and then I'll weave that knot right in, or that end right in without a knot. But more usually I tie a knot at the surface of the fabric, and I can show you guys how to do that at another Tuesday's Textile Alchemy. But it's funny, that particular thing, either tying your knot in your thread when you start sewing and finishing your seam when you're finished sewing, are things that are, there's so many different ways that you can do it. And oftentimes, like whoever taught you how to sew is how you do that, right? Like if it was your grandmother or your neighbor, whatever, like however you learned how to do that, like the first time you stitched, is probably how you continue to do it. And it's just a really cool thing. And there's, oftentimes like you'll see in families, like everybody does it the same way because they all learned from the same, group of people. Does anybody else have any questions? Let me see. There's some overlap going on in my feed. I don't see, it's hard for me to read it because the comments are all over the top of each other. But I was talking about also darning when I was promoting today's session, and I just wanted to say that, darning eggs are a thing, right? And I didn't put one within reach, so I'm not going to show you that today. But this is a sock that has a little hole right here. And actually, you know what? Next week I'll show you how to darn stuff, because there's a little more to it to really get it so you understand it. I don't want to rush through it for anybody who is really not familiar. But next week on Tuesday at 2:30 Eastern Standard Time, bring something that needs darning and your sewing kit that we just went over, and I will show you how to do it. You can do it with me step by step. And it's just a super good thing to know how to do, because I'm like harking back to those wool socks that we started out with. Like, good socks are expensive. And if you feel comfortable mending them, they will last you much longer than if you don't feel comfortable mending. And then the other thing that I have to just recommend while I'm talking about wool socks is there's a company in Vermont. I don't know. Does anybody know the company that's called Darn Tough? Which, just to start with, like, you're a sock company and you're darn tough. I love it. You're darning. So Darn Tough socks are actually guaranteed. So if you get a hole in your Darn Tough socks, you can actually send them back to the company and they will replace them for you. So just a really nice example of standing behind your product and knowing that the dollars that you're charging for the product are worth it. And, making your product that good quality that you're willing to take back a sock with a hole in it. Like how many, I don't know. And honestly, I have a lot of darn tough socks, and none of them have ever needed to be mended. So really a good company to support if mending's not your thing. And there's also like beautiful handmade socks. Like I had a comment yesterday from somebody who's a knitter, and they were like so excited to learn how to really mend those socks because they're so much work and they're so nice to make. But if they're only going to last as long as that first hole, when the hole comes through, then they're kind of, I don't know, the shelf life is a little bit shorter than it would be otherwise. So before I dash off, I want to say hi to Confined Space Ballet in Sudbury, Ontario, who loves wool socks. Of course you do, because you probably have to take really good care of your feet doing ballet, right? Um, and I'm not sure. I see Sadie Paint. It's so weird. Like, oh, Angela Carthon, hello, my dear. So I just want to tell you that Angela Carthon is my girlfriend from high school, and she is with me right now on Instagram. And I just want to shout out to her and say, hello, my dear, beautiful friend from so many years ago. I hope you're well. I know you're much warmer than I am because I think you live in like the Carolinas or Georgia or something where it's warm. Right now, it's not warm here. So have a great week, you guys. And next week, we're going to darn some socks. Okay. So show up then and bring your friends and listen to that podcast, you guys. Rags to Riches Textile Upcycling Podcast is my newest passion project. I really love podcasting, and I've got some amazing episodes coming up. I'm super excited about the different people that I'm meeting and just really being able to promote people doing cool stuff, like just using what they've got and not having an excessive fabric consumption habit. Like it's so easy to do, you guys. Like it's just so easy we are marketed to like we need all this stuff, right? Oh, and I see my friend Hussein tuning in from Karachi. And you guys are the best. I just so appreciate everybody's time showing up here. It's been such a nice thing to just participate in this arena and have you guys think that it's a worthy time, a time well spent, right? So Hasnain is saying he's excited to join. You guys, if you're on Instagram and you haven't already, check out Recycle Wool. This guy is amazing. He's got the most amazing workspace. He was one of our presenters last year at last year now. In April, we had the first ever Textile Upcycling Summit, and Hussein joined us from Karachi. And I'll tell you, it was eye candy. And he is really working on changing the way we consume, specifically wool. So if you are interested in learning more about what he does, check him out on Instagram. His handle is just Recycle Wool. And it's beautiful, beautiful stuff. We found each other on Instagram, right? His name, like he actually found a sweater in his thrift stream that I had manufactured back in like the 1990s, and sent me a message, and then we got to be friends. So very cool. So you guys check out Hussein. I'm giving you lots of homework now. Put together a sewing kit and then show back up next week, and we will get busy darning socks. It's at 2:30 on Tuesdays right here. It's Eastern Standard Time. So I don't know. Your time zone is obviously going to be different, but have a great week. It's so nice to see you. Bye, everybody.